and funk. With your DM, you just gotta hate and funk. Quit your BM, this is the city's funk. If I quit this season, I'll be still the greatest funk. My left stroke just went viral. That little you can with me if you wanted to. These expensive things just ran by them. These is dirty shoes. Hit the store, I can get them, but I don't wanna choose. And I'm quick, cut a person off. I'm uncomfortable. This is America. Don't get you slipping up. Don't get you slipping up. Look what I'm living up. This is America. Don't get you slipping up. Don't get you slipping up. Look what I'm living up. This may be the night that my dreams won't let me know. All the stars approach you. All the stars approach you. All the stars approach. This might not be the mountain will let me know. All the stars are closer. All the stars are closer. All the stars are. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Umbrella. She's up, she's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, we as a community really have to get back into the mindset of controlling our own school systems. We need to be in control of the curriculum that our children are learning. We send children to schools to be taught by mostly white women, with the curriculum demanded by the government. And if a teacher even thinks about getting off the course of indoctrination, they will be disciplined immediately. The difference between us and our ancestors before the civil rights movement, they already knew where they stood. There was no illusion of inclusion. They built their own schools because they had no other choice. Black kids weren't allowed anywhere near a white school. In America, it has been illegal for us to read longer than it's been legal for us to go to public schools. But even during the Jim Crow era, they recognized the importance of educating themselves and educating their children enough to build their own schools. And today, it's not like schools aren't still segregated. Our children go to rundown schools where they learn how to assimilate and be good workers in a system designed to hurt them and eventually get them into voluntary servitude. Meanwhile, in their schools, they teach their own children about business, about how to handle money, about how to survive in the real world. And not only survive, but be successful. But what they don't tell you is how many of these prestigious colleges was built by slaves and offer slave money. Places like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, William and Mary, the University of Virginia. All of these colleges have some kind of ties with slavery, and most of them was funded by the transatlantic slave trade. And today, you can still find a bunch of racism at these places, but they protect the institutes that they build. And until we learn how to protect the institutes that we do build, the same thing is going to continue to happen. If it comes down to it, they have no problem deputizing people. Anytime they feel like niggas getting out of their place, they have no problem deputizing random white citizens to help get us back in line. And the standard to be a cop is so low, almost anybody can apply and become a cop. But then there are some people that wanted to be cops that couldn't even pass those standards. So then they become security guards and they act like cops. And they think they can do whatever cops can do. And when it comes to killing an unarmed black man, in many cases, they do get the same privilege as cops. In North Carolina, a young brother, Deandre Ballard, who was a college student going to a HBCU when he was shot to death by a security guard in a student apartment complex. So let's see how this unarmed brother ended up getting shot and killed by a security guard in his own apartment complex.
Family and friends said goodbye to Deandre Ballard today. He was killed by a security guard last week. As
CBS 17's Derek Lewis reports, his funeral is not the end of this family's fight for justice.
And speak those things that will bring life.
Prayer, songs, and praises filled Without Limits Christian Center in New Bern Friday to celebrate Deandre Ballard's life.
Trying not to really take it as hard as it is, but he was a good young man, great young man.
Ballard's great uncle, Leon Becton, along with other family and friends, has questions about Ballard's death. The 23-year-old died September 18th, hours after he was shot at Campus Crossings Apartments.
Still kind of unbelievable. It's hard to accept the way it happened. And as of yet, we still don't know the exact way it happened.
Guards with NC Detective Agency patrol Campus Crossings apartment complex. The agency tells me one of its guards shot Ballard in self-defense, but Durham police haven't released any information about the investigation.
I feel like Durham Police Department has not done all that they could have done. How does a child become lost in a morgue at the hospital and lost for days, and no one knows where he is?
It took police 3 days to identify Ballard after he was shot. Police say Ballard did not have any identification with him. During service, Ballard's family showed off his outgoing personality. Family tells me he was an honor student with big dreams ahead.
That hurt me more than anything, that he's no longer here to follow what he wanted to do.
Relatives say the big crowd coming together for Ballard is for 3 reasons.
Love, family, support.
As the family celebrates Ballard, no charges have been filed in the shooting. NC Detective Agency says the guard who shot Ballard is back at work.
The security guard who shot Deandre Ballard says he feared for his life and had to defend himself. CBS 17's Derek Lewis is digging deeper into this case. Derek.
Deandre Ballard was a student here at NCCU. Today, I talked on the phone with his mother, Ornisha Ballard, for about 15 minutes. She tells me she does not know why a security guard would shoot her son, but she wants answers.
My son was a lovable person. He was a nice person. He was a genuine person. I don't think that, he would just attack somebody just because.
Deandre Ballard was shot and killed at Campus Crossing Apartments. Durham police say the shooting happened September 17th. Ornisha Ballard, his mother, says police told her Ballard walked out of his apartment, leaving his keys, phone, and ID behind, and tried breaking into cars. She tells me police say a security guard at the complex shot Deandre Ballard after getting into the guard's car.
My son, would speak to the security guards and stuff like that. So why would my son want to attack a security guard?
The security company the guard works for, NC Detective Agency, says the shooting is justified 100% and the officer acted in self-defense. The company's management declined to go into any other details, but does say the public will know much more about what happened when the investigation is complete. Ornisha Ballard is having a hard time believing that.
How is it self-defense when my son was unarmed? My son he's not even a big person. So why would you feel that your life was in danger because, you thought that my son was going to do something to you? It's not 100% justifiable. I don't buy it.
Ballard says police told her son was shot in the arm and the bullet went through to his stomach. She says a gun should have never been pulled out.
I feel like this is something that they just want to, just sweep under the rug and say, okay, Deandre did this to the officer and he had all the right to kill him. No, he did not have a right to kill my son.
Ornisha found out her son was dead 3 days after the shooting. She says his roommates called her to let her know that he was missing, but she didn't find out what happened until she showed up here at the university.
Now, according to the security guard, he was making his rounds at the complex when he stopped at the security booth so another guard could go to the bathroom. He said he noticed this young brother, Deandre Ballard, trying to break into cars, and so the security guard said he started shouting at him. So then the security guard said this brother, Deandre Ballard, went up and got in his car that he left running while he was waiting in the security booth. But he said this brother ran and jumped in the passenger side. Now, the security guard's story is confusing because he went from being in the security booth in one version of the story to being in the car in another version. He said this brother, Deandre, got in his car and started fighting him. Then the guard said he got out of the car, came around to his side, and then started reaching for his gun. The guard said he came over and immediately put his hands on him, so he feared for his life and had no other choice but to open fire. Now, the second security guard, who was already doing his caping, said he heard the altercation, but by the time he got back, this young brother was already shot. When they called 911, the second security guard said this brother, Deandre Ballard, was reaching for a gun. And the first security guard said he jumped into his car trying to fight him. And that's why he shot him. Now, Deandre Ballard, this college student who is a month away from graduating, he doesn't have a record, he's never been in trouble, and before there could even be an investigation, the security company who hasn't released their names started caping right away, saying this shooting was 100% justified.
We're working to learn more information about the shooting death of an NCCU student.
He was killed by a security guard at an off-campus apartment. Well, many people wanted to know if the guard could legally carry a gun, and CBS 17's Derek Lewis went to work to get that answer. He joins us live from Durham tonight. Derek, what did you learn?
Yeah, Maggie, the answer is yes. But while talking to lawmakers and the state's Department of Public Safety today, they tell me there is more to it when it comes to security guards legally carrying guns. The NC Detective Agency, a security company in Durham, says one of its guards is responsible for shooting and killing NCCU student Deandre Ballard. They go on to say the shooting is 100% justified. I've learned security guards can legally have guns through a two-step process through the Private Protective Services, an organization that operates under the state's Department of Public Safety. Brian Jones is the director.
The board issues licenses to security guard and patrol companies, and the individuals that represent those companies actually receive the license, and then the individual employees that work for the license holder are considered registrants. So armed and unarmed security guards are registered through the board.
The organization keeps records of licenses they issue. Jones tells me NC Detective Agency has been a licensed security guard company since 1981 and has 22 registered armed guards.
I think the most important thing is whether the firm that was providing security services had the authority to have guards with firearms, and they were properly licensed and properly trained.
NC Detective Agency is properly licensed and trained. I've learned armed guards must have 36 hours of training and pass a criminal history check. Senator Floyd McKissick Jr. says whether armed guards should be at a student housing apartment complex is up to management.
If you have an apartment complex that's had some problems where they thought perhaps they needed people there to provide security with firearms, that's a situation where it might be needed.
Now, I stopped by the security company today trying to get more information about the guard who they say shot and killed Ballard, but company management declined an interview.
A North Carolina Central student shot and killed at an off-campus apartment complex by a security guard.
And tonight we're hearing from the company where that guard works, and we're learning more about the student who classmates say made a big impact on campus. CBS 17's Michael Hyland has the new details on the investigation from Durham.
We can't believe it.
Based on what people at NC Central knew about Deandre Ballard, that's what they all told us. They just can't believe it.
Another young man with a bright future and had turned the corner, was ready to go. Now he's gone.
Ballard was 23 and from New Bern. He hoped to graduate from here next fall and become a PE teacher. This website he made is part of a school project. His professors remember him as cheerful and fun-loving.
And he wanted to do what he could for children. His main thing was to work with kids.
Olivia Harris recently had a class with him.
Very, helpful. I didn't really understand certain things, so he was always, willing to come.
That's why the news of his death shocked everyone who knew him. Durham police say he got shot at this apartment complex near Central last Monday. Kevin Ladd is vice president at the NC Detective Agency. He says a security guard who works for his company is the one who shot Ballard. Is there any reason he should face charges for doing this?
The facts that we know, no. None.
Ladd wouldn't give details on what happened in the moments before the shooting.
It's a tragedy. He should have never gotten that far, but our officer, he legitimately feared for his life, and he had to protect himself.
It's not clear why. Ladd didn't identify the security guard, but said he's worked for the company for 15 years and had training as well as a state certification. The university held a vigil for Ballard over the weekend. Durham police have not filed any charges in this case.
Now, although Kevin Ladd, the owner of the security company, refused to release anybody's name, he made sure to make it clear this security guard was another black man. Now, they will allow a black person to racially profile another black person, and in some cases even let black cops or black security guards get away with killing an unarmed black person. You're not going to see too many black cops racially profiling and killing white people. Because if a black cop or security guard kills an unarmed white person, they're going to jail or at least be charged. Now, after they shot and killed this young brother, Deandre Ballard, it took them 3 days to identify him. They said because he didn't have any identification. It wasn't until people noticed he was missing and called his family, and his family filed a missing persons report, did his family even find out he was killed. And of course, nobody's been charged, even though the security company itself has a history of problems and violations.
Trying not to really take it as hard as it is, but he was a good young man, great young man.
How does a child become lost in a morgue at the hospital and lost for days and no one knows where he is?
Family and friends remembering Deandre Ballard today in New Bern. The 23-year-old student was set to graduate in May from NCCU. His family says he had an outgoing personality. He was an honor student and he had big dreams. But the young man was shot and killed by a security guard at the Campus Crossing Apartments where he lived. Family and friends want answers about Deandre Ballard's death. Durham police still haven't released any specific information on its investigation.
CBS 17's Derek Lewis is digging deeper to find out more about the security guard involved and the agency he works for.
Through the pouring rain, Brian Best sits outside alone with his sign protesting the company across the street, NC Detective Agency.
What they're telling us right now is quite clearly not the truth, and we need to get to the bottom of this.
Best had known Deandre Ballard since high school. Ballard, an NCCU student, died after being shot at Campus Crossings apartment complex. Durham police have yet to release details about their investigation, but NC Detective Agency says one of its guards shot Ballard out of self-defense. Best does not believe it.
We're not going to be able to bring him back, but we can at least make sure that whoever is responsible faces consequences.
The state's Private Protective Services is an organization that issues licenses and registrations to companies and guards. I went through their public records online and found the state has given NC Detective Agency 3 violations since 2010. The first came on August 18, 2010. State records show an employee with the company provided false information regarding unarmed guard training certificates, allowing armed guards to carry a firearm during the course of performing their duties without first having met the qualifications of the board. The state made everyone get retrained. Documents show the second violation happened on October 26, 2011. An employee made a false statement on an application for a license, registration, or permit, or for renewal of a license, registration, or permit. And the third violation came on December 12, 2012, when an employee for the company failed to properly register armed guards. 2 additional issues as part of this third violation led to a fine of more than $2,600. The state tells me it's waiting for Durham police to complete its investigation into Ballard's shooting before deciding on any potential action against the company.
In the event that we determined that there was a violation of that statute, then the board may take action, and we would present the findings of any investigation to the board for their consideration.
For now, Best, along with other friends and family, continues to wait for more details about Deandre Ballard's death.
I don't know what the truth is, but I do know right now we don't have it.
Best tells me he's talked to Ballard's family. He is working with them and other people in the community to plan more protests in the city.
Now, this security company had 3 violations in the last few years. Kevin Ladd, the owner who was caping for the security guard, he got in trouble himself for lying about security guards being qualified to be armed. He didn't meet the proper qualifications to have armed security guards, and other problems with them being licensed to carry. Now, they did get in trouble and they were reprimanded when no one died. But now this young brother is dead, they're careful not to place blame or say anybody did anything wrong. They don't want to do anything that can actually get the security guard in trouble for what he did. But it's important to get control of our kids' mentality so we don't racially profile each other and look at each other sideways. Most of that comes from the programming that has been instilled in us. On top of the environments, the system the American government created and put us in. It's important to have our own schools and our own colleges, not only to protect our children, but to actually educate our children, to teach them how to actually survive in the world, teach them about finance, teach them about their history, and teach them how to build their own system, and most importantly, protect what they build. We have to learn how to put our tribal differences aside for the next generation. We can't let our personal beliefs keep us from building what we have to build to get out of the situation. At the end of the day, it won't stop until we stop it. And until we realize we're all we got, then we're going to continue to be in the same situation.
Send an ambulance to Campus Crossing, 1400 East Cornwallis. I'm a security officer. I just shot a black male. He jumped in my car.
You are listening to a portion of the 911 call made moments after a shooting that killed an NC Central University student last month. The person who called appears to be the security guard who shot Deandre Ballard. He describes what happened in the moments leading up to the shooting at Campus Cross Apartments.
I see this guy, I'm in my car. I see this guy trying to get inside somebody else's car. I said, hey man, what's going on? He jumped inside my car. He started trying to attack and try to fight me or whatever, and try to reach for my gun. And so that's why I think I had shot him.
CBS 17 obtained those 911 calls about an hour ago, long after a group of NC Central students rallied for answers today from police, the city, anyone who could shed some light on what led up to Ballard's death. Now, for the first time since this story broke, Durham's mayor is weighing in on the shooting. CBS 17's Derek Lewis reports.
Protesters stand outside NC Detective Agency calling for justice.
Justice hasn't been served because nobody's been arrested.
Alvarez Rogers organized a rally in support of 23-year-old Deandre Ballard. Ballard, an NCCU student, died after he was shot on September 17th at Campus Crossings Apartments.
Deandre, he was a good man. He was very humble. You know, he was on his way to great things, and they just took his life for no reason.
NC Detective Agency tells me one of its guards shot Ballard. The agency says it was justified. I'm told the guard is back at work.
My heart goes out to the family.
Today, for the first time since the shooting, Durham's mayor, Steve Schewel, spoke with me about what happened. Schewel says he's talked to the city manager, who is in constant contact with the police chief about Ballard's investigation.
It's terrible. And I mean, I can deeply understand the frustration of the family and friends. They want to know as soon as they can. And I really can understand their frustration, but I really have also a lot of confidence in Chief Davis that they're going to do a very thorough investigation.
Schewel says these investigations take time.
And they're going to be able to really do a good job of presenting the facts to the district attorney so he can make a decision about, you know, whether or not to have an indictment.
In the meantime, protesters want Campus Crossings Apartments, which houses many NCCU students, to end its contract with NC Detective Agency. They want the name of the guard, any related video released, and someone arrested. Rogers says although investigations take time, he will continue to fight.
We're not going to let the public forget about what happened because we, the people, we are in control of society. Not the government, not the police department, none of that. They work for all of us.
In Durham, I'm Derek Lewis, CBS 17 News.
Now, the security guard works for NC Detective Agency, and some of its employees watched the protest but declined to comment. CBS 17 learned the company is properly licensed and trained under state law. That means all armed guards are required to undergo 36 hours of training and pass a criminal background check.
Yo, it's illegal for him to take your bag. It don't matter what's in that bag. He can't take it. All right? Understand that. He could take it. He could do whatever he want, and then just make sure you get his badge number and report it. My grandmother worked for the police department. I know you can't take his bag. You can't take his bag, man. You shouldn't have never picked their bag up.
You telling me go somewhere else to get my bag back? Okay, so go somewhere else. Give me my bag. What? I'm not going nowhere.
They ain't even hurting nobody, man. Your corner. Yeah. What make it your corner? You live around here?
The badge makes it my corner.
Do you live around here? That badge don't make it your corner.
The badge makes you a peace officer.
If anything, it's my corner. I pay taxes.
The badge makes you a peace officer.
It's my corner. You work for their parents. You understand? Come on, man. Don't do that. Them guys could be doing bad shit, man. You could be doing something else. You know they ain't the ones. They not the one. That's how you could do when you don't live.
Shamik Pugh was serving 5 years for burglary. Halfway through his sentence, he and 3 others were brutally stabbed inside Ohio's Lucasville prison.
I went out to recreation, ankle shackles and handcuffed to a table that you supposed to feel safe going out there to them tables. Remind you, we playing spades.
As the men played cards, another prisoner at the table behind them got up and attacked the men. Shackled, they were unable to run.
I was like, wow, this can't be happening. I got up and the other inmates got up, but we trying to get out our cuffs. We trying to get out.
The stabbing, captured in security video obtained exclusively by the Associated Press, raises questions about how such an attack could have happened inside one of Ohio's most secure prisons. The alleged attacker, Greg Rinke, was involved in a second attack months later. nearly killing a prison guard.
Our heart goes out to the victims in this case.
Newly elected prosecutor Shane Tiemann charged Rinke in both attacks after authorities initially declined to prosecute him. They argued Rinke was already serving life.
Yes, Mr. Rinke's in prison for life, but these inmates, these gentlemen that were there, regardless of whatever reason they were in prison, they have a right to be protected.
Pugh believes guards set the group up that day, something prison authorities, the guards union, and Tiemann strongly deny.
I have no basis to believe this was a setup.
They didn't want me to come home, and they didn't want me to shine a light onto that institution.
Johnny Perez, a prison reform advocate who spent 13 years behind bars, also questions the events that led to the stabbing.
What's taking them so long to get there? If they are in general population, it would be great to know if this is routine.
He believes a security breach is likely to blame.
You know, my gut instinct or my hunch that the correctional officer failed to do their job that day, and as a result, you know, this incident could have been completely preventable.
In 1993, 9 inmates and a prison guard were killed at Lucasville during an 11-day disturbance, one of the longest prison riots in U.S. history. A prison inspection report published in 2016 found that Lucasville has historically had a high number of assaults because of its large gang-affiliated population. In reaction to the stabbing, the prison stopped the practice of shackling multiple inmates to a table.
Shocking case coming to light. 3 KKK members who are current and former Florida corrections employees are now arrested for allegedly plotting to kill an inmate. ABC Action News reporter Ryan Raish joining us live now with the details he just got from the State Attorney General's office. Ryan?
Yeah, we just wrapped up a press conference with Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is fired up about these arrests. She says 3 now former Department of Correction workers and allegedly members of the KKK concocted a plan to kill a now former inmate, but that plan backfired big time. Take a look. We just got the mugshots for these 3 guys: Thomas Driver, David Moran, and Charles Newcomb. They all worked for a facility in Lake Butler, Florida. Investigators say they hatched a plan to inject insulin into a now former inmate, attach a fishing pole into his hand, and make it look like he drowned. But get this, police caught on, foiled the plan, and instead faked a murder scene with the inmate, making it look like he got shot 3 times.
Those photos were then shown to the corrections officers, who are alleged members of the KKK, and we're very proud of this killing.
The investigators say the 3 prison workers wanted the inmate dead, all because it's in retaliation of a fight that occurred with the inmate and one of those workers. Those 3 workers are now charged with conspiracy to commit murder. This appears to be yet another example of corruption within the Florida state prison system, and right now legislators are working on some better oversight to fix that system. We'll have much more on that coming up at 11. Also, I'm reading through this criminal affidavit that we just got our hands on. There's some conversation between the workers and that informant, some wild stuff in here.
These pictures obtained by the local paper, the Tallahassee Democrat, show Michael Ertel at a private Halloween party in 2005, posing as a Hurricane Katrina victim. At the time, Ertel was a county supervisor of elections. Just weeks ago, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had appointed him Secretary of State.
It's unfortunate. I think he's done a lot of good work, but at the same time, I've got to have an administration that's going to be focused on what matters to Floridians, and I don't want to get mired into kind of side controversies.
According to the paper, the photos were taken just 2 months after Hurricane Katrina ravaged the Gulf Coast. Ertel is seen in blackface, wearing red lipstick, earrings, and a New Orleans Saints bandana. There's nothing I can say, he told the paper when asked about the photos. Today, the paper says it shared them with the governor's office. Ertel abruptly resigned hours later, just a short time after testifying before lawmakers about election lawsuits. NBC News could not reach him for comment.
He had arranged for media visits to New Orleans after the disaster, so for him to come along and do this was really shocking, especially in the aftermath of the storm.
Ertel, an Army veteran, was in charge of restoring voting rights to more than 1 million ex-felons, which voters approved in November. Tonight, he's out of a job.
Governor Ralph Northam is apologizing after a photo surfaced from a 1984 EVMS yearbook. It shows a person in blackface and another dressed in a Ku Klux Klan robe.
The picture is on the same page as photos of Ralph Northam. Hours after the picture was first reported, the governor issued a statement followed by this video message.
I am deeply sorry. I cannot change the decisions I made, nor can I undo the harm my behavior caused then and today.
Now, it is not clear which person in the photo is Northam, and he did not clarify that in his statement. One thing is clear. Some Republicans think Northam should resign.
And they're not alone. 10 on your side's Brett Hall joins us now. And Brett, you've been talking to folks tonight. Is the governor's apology enough?
Well, this is very rapid development because it seems that nobody knew about this decision made 35 years ago and that lived in this library for 35 years until today. And now it looks like it could very well be the end of Governor Northam's political career. One of them was him. One of the men dressed up in either blackface or a Ku Klux Klan outfit was the man who would become the 73rd governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam. He made the admission himself today in a statement, hours after a conservative website first found the photo in Northam's section in the 1984 Eastern Virginia Medical School yearbook.
That photo and the racist and offensive attitudes it represents does not reflect that person I am today or the way that I have conducted myself as a soldier, a doctor, and a public servant. I am deeply sorry.
However, another photo has since surfaced from Northam's time at VMI. This time, it's not the picture itself, but his nickname that has people outraged. It says he was called Coonman.
Yes, that he would need to resign.
Some people say, well, things from your past should be forgiven. This is the governor, and in the current political climate, this is a distraction. Some other people are sticking with him.
He's doing his job. I don't hear anyone complaining about him doing his job well, so I think he focused on the relevant things.
The governor says he intends to fill out his term, but tonight, the pressure is mounting. And that pressure coming from the federal level now as well. Congresswoman Elaine Loria releasing a statement that this isn't political, but he needs to resign. But both Senators Mark Warner and Senators Tim Kaine go short of saying they want him to resign, but saying he has a lot of work to do to gain back the trust of Virginians.
I have a dream today that one day little black boys and black girls.
This is Sean King, a second grader at Meridian Ranch Elementary.
I liked it. I was sorting for it.
He's all dressed up for a class presentation.
I worked very hard. I did try my best. I have a dream today. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation.
Sean is portraying a historical figure assigned by his teacher.
Well, Martin Luther King Jr.
He said, Mom, I want to wear a suit because that's what he wore, and a black tie, and I have to wear a white shirt. And he said, also I want to do my face in black.
I want to be like it because I thought it was a fun project to do.
His black face paint landed him and his parents in the principal's office.
They thought it was inappropriate and it would be disrespectful to black people. But I say that it's not. I like black people. I don't want to be mean to them. It's just a costume. I don't want to insult anybody.
The school district says a staff member and some students were offended by the face paint.
When other students are offended by something, it's really the principal's role to make sure that the educational environment is safe for all the students.
But students were never mentioned in the complaint, according to Sean's parents. They were told it was a female staff member who was offended. Other parents, including a PTA member, said there was no problem with Sean's face paint.
It's not about them. This was about a second grade class and their project. It had nothing to do with the woman that was taking it the wrong way. And I think she needs to realize the bigger picture. If my own son had been chosen to be Martin Luther King, he's a blonde, I would have gotten him a black wig and I probably would have painted his face too.
I don't think there's another way.
Despite an outcry of support, Sean was still asked to wash his face, but his parents refused and pulled him out of school.
I think it's pretty sad that you've got a principal, you've got faculty members that are acting the way they are when they should be the ones setting the example for the children.
I learned something when I went into that office. Don't be afraid. Have a strong voice.
He's proud. He's proud of what he did, and I'm proud of what he did, too.
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, we know slavery built America, and not just made America wealthy, but literally built America. And they love to say, well, we're also the ones who ended slavery. But when you actually look at the 13th Amendment, we know America never did end slavery. The key word in the 13th Amendment is accept. Accept as punishment for a crime. They didn't say who gets to create the laws. They didn't say who gets to enforce the laws or how they should be enforced. But in essence, simply being black was the crime. The only way they could sleep at night was to say we were savages that justified what they were doing to us. And since we're naturally criminals and naturally violent, that justifies racially profiling us and shooting first and asking questions later. But what their pseudoscience and their misleading information doesn't tell you is they legalize themselves killing, torturing, enslaving you while making everything you do a crime. It was illegal for a group of black people to get together without a white person present. It was illegal for you to be outside after a certain time in certain places. God forbid a Negro in America with a gun, how illegal that is. They ended up incarcerating more people after the 13th Amendment than they had in slavery before the 13th Amendment. To this day, it's no secret America still uses prison labor. One county down in Gainesville, Florida, just voted to end their contract with the Florida Department of Corrections. Now, they aren't trying to ban it or outlaw it to any private companies. This is just one county in the local government that's ending their contract with private prisons. This one institution, the Florida Department of Corrections, has close to 600 contracts with organizations, colleges like the University of Florida, and with local governments across the country. And in Florida, the only time prisoners were paid for their work was if they worked for an organization called Pride Enterprises. Now, Pride Enterprises has 41 centers and 29 correctional facilities across the state. And if you work for them, you get paid a whole 20 to 55 cents an hour. Now, they charge these people more to be in jail per day than they actually pay them. Places like Louisiana, you can make anywhere from 4 cents an hour to $1. And they justify using slave labor by saying they're teaching them skills and helping them get jobs once they get out. And we know all these jobs is waiting on felons when they get out of jail. The government created an environment of poverty and filled people with so much miseducation about themselves, and then introduced drugs and guns into the community and step back and say, look what you're doing. And then they use that as talking points to promote racial profiling. And they use it to justify these disproportionate numbers in prison. And if you aren't arrested, you can end up like this 21-year-old brother, Jimmie Atchison. He was a young unarmed brother in Atlanta that ended up getting shot in the face by the police. So let's see how this young brother, Jimmie Atchison, ended up getting shot and killed by Atlanta police.
Family members are demanding transparency after another deadly shooting involving law enforcement in Atlanta. The man killed today as a task force tried to serve a warrant for an armed robbery. 11 Live's Latasha Gibbons is live in Southwest Atlanta tonight. Latasha, walk us through what happened there today.
Well, Cheryl, there are a lot of questions that have not been answered yet. Like, the family wants to know if he had a gun or any sort of weapon on him and where on his body was he shot. As they mourn, they're demanding answers to those questions.
There's a big boy. Big gunshot.
Bino says he woke up to the sound of gunfire at his apartment complex. He soon learned his childhood friend, identified by family as 21-year-old Jimmie Atchison, was shot and killed just a few doors down.
It was an armed robbery suspect that they were looking for.
Kevin Rosen with the FBI says agents were serving a warrant to an armed robbery suspect. As they tried to make contact, the suspect led them on a chase through the complex.
They went to that apartment, confronted the suspect, and the suspect fled. He jumped out a window of one of the apartments, jumped down a couple floors. There was a foot chase that ensued into another apartment building and into another apartment, and that's where the suspect was confronted by a task force officer on the ammo task force, and the suspect was eventually shot.
Relatives say Atchison was part of the rap group, the OTG Gang, seen performing here. They say he was visiting his child's mother when the FBI task force arrived. The family says an infant and a 4-year-old were inside the apartment.
From my understanding, that's why he ran, because he didn't want anything, them to come in and anything happen to the kids.
The family says they want to know why he was shot.
I want to get to the bottom of this.
And I feel like it's time for us to come together.
I just want to know for sure if my nephew had a weapon and where was he shot at. Those are my main two concerns.
Now, it was an APD officer who's part of the FBI task force who fired that fatal shot. And we're told FBI agents from the D.C. office headquarters will travel to Atlanta to investigate this case. The GBI is also assisting with this shooting investigation. Cheryl, back to you.
All right, Latasha, thank you. This is all happening as the GBI investigates another deadly shooting involving an APD officer 1 week ago today. Police say 18-year-old Dietrich Griffin was killed when he tried to steal a plainclothes officer's unmarked car from a gas station. The GBI says the teen did not have a weapon. So far, we have not gotten any answers as to why the officer opened fire in that case or whether charges would be filed.
Now, according to police, this young brother, Jimmie Atchison, was accused of a robbery, and they were there to serve a warrant. His family said they don't know any details about a robbery, but that's not in his character. But the police, a task force that was made up of FBI agents and Atlanta police, broke into the apartment with military-style assault rifles. And his family said because his girlfriend and his baby was in the house, he ran, fearing for the life of him and his family. He got out of the window and ran to his friend's apartment, where he went to go hide in the closet. Now, witnesses who saw him running said he clearly did not have a gun. Since he was caught off guard and just ran out of his apartment, from what he had on, you can clearly see he didn't have a gun. Now, witnesses say when the police got in the apartment and found him in the closet, he was giving up, surrendering with his hands out. An Asian cop, Officer Sun Kim, shot him in the face. Now, although police are vague and unclear about what happened, we know he didn't have a gun because the first thing they would have said is he's armed and dangerous, and they fear for their life. And even though this cop that fired the shots, Officer Sun Kim, is an Atlanta police officer, the FBI came in to investigate because they were involved and sponsored this task force.
I was contacted by the family probably 2 or 3 days after Jimmie was killed, and they were looking for, at that point, answers. They had been getting the runaround from law enforcement. It wasn't clear what agency was investigating, who was in charge. It wasn't clear exactly how their son died. They didn't know if he had been shot once or shot multiple times, if he had been beaten to death. They were just getting a bunch of misinformation, and they just wanted help. They wanted help to navigate the process, to make sure that, you know, someone was held accountable to give them answers about what happened. And so that's what they asked me to do, and that's what I agreed to do. And so from that point, we assembled a team of people together. I reached out to Gerald fairly soon after being contacted by the family to seek his help, and just, you know, getting answers and getting the word out about what happened. We also got our investigator on board and immediately started trying to interview witnesses to just try to get a sense of what was going on. And so that's what led us here today. We came to the scene to try to get answers about what happened to Jimmie, and we've learned a lot since we've been here today. We have learned that without question, Jimmie was unarmed. And there can't be any real debate about him being unarmed because there was a foot chase that was fairly extensive, and his arms were visible to everybody who was there. So he had no weapon. He had sought refuge inside of an apartment with an individual who he had known for a long time, since childhood. That individual reports that he was terrified. He was in fear for his life and was just afraid he was about to be killed. He at that point hid in a closet and was hiding in a closet. It's not entirely clear how law enforcement got into the apartment, but they did get into that apartment where he was hiding shortly after that. And they came in with weapons drawn. They came upon him in a closet, and they shot him right then and there in the closet where he was found.
Why was the FBI involved? I know you're a former federal prosecutor. Did you know initially when you took the case that the FBI was involved?
I did. I got some sort of initial information from the family. It wasn't clear at first why the FBI was involved, but it became pretty clear why they were involved after some initial investigation. Apparently, the FBI was working in conjunction with the Atlanta Police Department in a task force, or on a task force, the FBI Fugitive Task Force. And it's basically a task force of federal agents, state officers, law enforcement, who work together to serve warrants, arrest warrants. That's it. It's not all that complicated what they get funding to do, but they get funding in essence to go out and serve arrest warrants for people. Now, these are people who haven't been indicted yet. Typically, they have not had a lawyer yet. They haven't seen a police report. They are still presumed innocent. At that point, they are serving, for the most part, arrest warrants, and that's what they were doing on the day that Jimmie was killed. It's our understanding that they had an arrest warrant for him based on an accusation that someone made against him. Our information is that that accusation is not well-founded, but we know that there was an accusation at least made by a female acquaintance, something involving a cell phone. In any event, we don't know all the details of that. There is some dispute about whether there was a weapon involved in that or not. In any event, what we do know is on the day he was killed, there was no weapon. He had no weapon. He was unarmed. He was in a closet. He had nowhere to go. There was nothing dangerous within his reach. And he was shot in the face by the police. Now, what their excuse for that is, we are still waiting for answers in that regard.
Now, this brother Jimmie Atchison, who was only accused of a crime, he wasn't found guilty. He didn't even go to court yet. And it turns out it was a complaint over something about a cell phone from somebody that he knows. Nothing he did seems to warrant being shot in the face. And people say because of the Super Bowl and what's going on in Atlanta, they're trying to sweep it under the rug. The police have been so quiet and low-key about this case. Even the NAACP had to launch their own investigation.
I'm coming to you from inside an Atlanta apartment, Southwest Atlanta apartment. It's where 21-year-old Jimmie Atchison was shot and killed by police on the 22nd of January, 2019. Attorney Tanya Miller, what are we looking at in this closet?
This is the closet where Jimmie was killed. He was shot in his face, unarmed, by the police.
Okay. Gerald Griggs, you're here. What's your interest in all of this?
My interest is this underscores what we've been talking about and protesting for years. Atlanta has a problem. It has a police brutality problem. We need to address it right now.
I spoke with the chief of police, who has not provided any details, but the details we've been able to gather indicate that first it was a suspicious arrest. There was an issue over a cell phone, a disagreement. So in response to that, a criminal warrant was issued, and the police apparently descended upon an apartment complex in full military weaponry. A gentleman jumped out of a third floor window running away, probably a little fearful of his life. They cornered him in a closet of a neighbor's house, and according to witnesses, he came out hands up but was shot in the face by a police officer of Asian descent who reported has had some other issues of violence against black and brown suspects and the community. So at first, I think the policeman was returned to duty, but after some outcry, including from the district attorney in Fulton County, which is Atlanta, he was relieved of duty, and the investigation is ongoing. We'll continue to monitor the case. I've had a couple of conversations with the police chief that have been less than forthcoming, but we will follow the information as much as we can. There's been, reports that there were several officers were involved. This particular officer was the only one to discharge a firearm. The other officers had tasers, but this officer used a deadly force that resulted in the loss of life of a 21-year-old black man. Even disagreement over cell phones should not be a death penalty.
Now, only this one cop, Officer Sun Kim, pulled his gun and fired. Every other cop that was there pulled out their taser. But this cop, Officer Sun Kim, was initially put right back on the force, and they didn't punish him at all until an outcry, and then they gave him his paid vacation. This Asian cop is said to have a history of violence with black people. But simply because this brother was accused of committing a crime, that justifies the police shooting him in the face. even though he's unarmed. This system is designed to criminalize and enslave us. And if we so much as think of resisting or trying to stop it, then we need to be put back in our place and made an example of. Every century, racism takes on a new face. And they do little things like Florida did with prison labor, where they say they're just not going to renew their contracts. They never actually mention ending it. But if you do anything to resist it, then that's punishable by death. And they tell you if you don't want to get hurt, just do what they say. No matter how many civil rights or human rights they violate. If you resist, you deserve whatever happens to you. But until we create our own institutions to protect us, and then protect those institutions that we build, and they go out of their way to protect their institutions. But until we can build our own and have some kind of nation or government or form some kind of army that can back us up, then we're going to be subject to somebody else's laws and punishments. And things will only stop when we stop it.
Investigators are looking into the death threats against Atlanta police officers tonight. They say these threats came after an officer shot and killed a teenager stealing his vehicle.
This happened on Tuesday night. 11 Alive's Latasha Givens talked exclusively with the teenager's family. She joins us with more on these death threats. Latasha, police point to gangs. The family hurt and angry by that.
That's right, Cheryl. There's a lot of emotion surrounding this case. On one side, you have a grieving family who tragically lost a son while he was still in a car, but the family and their attorney says the officer shouldn't have killed him over it. But on the other side, investigators say Griffin was a known gang member, and since he died, their officers have received death threats. Here's what we found out. 18-year-old Deandre Griffin was shot and killed Tuesday night at a gas station off of Whitehall Street in Southwest Atlanta. Investigators say while an officer in plain clothes and an unmarked vehicle was pumping gas, Griffin slid into the vehicle and began driving away. The teen was shot while inside. GBI states he crashed into 2 other vehicles. Hours later, APD says death threats were issued against officers. Those threats prompted them to send out this alert to police radios.
Due to the recent shooting of a known gang member by an Atlanta police officer, all officers should remain alert at all times. Use caution during your shift and while traveling to and from work. APD's intelligence unit is monitoring the situation and will provide updates as needed.
The department also requested that all media outlets remove the picture of the officer who shot him for his own protection. We inquired about the radio alert that made those threats public. We received this email from APD. It reads in part, based on information we've received that death threats have been made against Atlanta police officers as a result of the fatal shooting Tuesday night of a known gang member by one of our officers. Such broadcasts are not unusual and serve to ensure our officers remain alert and aware of potential danger. We spoke to Johnny Hibbert, the family's attorney, about his client's alleged gang activity. He vehemently denies those claims.
I'm really furious about this because the one thing this should tell you is that they have their backs up against the wall. Deandre Griffin certainly lived in West End. I'm sure that he knew people involved in criminal activity. How could he not, growing up there?
And gas station employees told us yesterday that surveillance video was turned over to police. However, we don't know what that video shows. The coroner's report has not yet been released.
I'm taking you to jail. You can tell me to be quiet for a second. You're going to jail for disorderly person if you keep yelling. What? On my own property? Jail for disorderly person. Come on, officer. Okay. What are you doing, bro? Okay. I'm going to jail. You push me and shit. Come on, man. Give the baby back. Back off. Back off. I can't use the baby, bro. Back off now.
Baby, you bag up. Bag up. No, because you ain't going to jail for him. Okay, but you're not going to jail for him. Okay, but you're not going to jail. Because I ain't got no money to get your black. And they tasing with the baby in his hand, bro. Y'all some, oh my God, bro. Y'all niggas some hoes, bro. Y'all niggas, that's insane, bro. Y'all tasing with the baby. You gotta go. You gotta go. That's some hoes, dog.
They some fun out. Y'all still tasing this nigga. Y'all tasing him, man. Back up. Come on, man. Get back. What are y'all doing, bro? Get back. Y'all still tasing him, man.
So what? Get back.
He got a baby in his head.
A man is now back home with his daughter after police admitted to throwing him in jail for a crime he didn't commit.
Now, this is a story that you will only see here on ABC Action News. Our Jasmine Stiles joins us live now from the satellite feed room. Jasmine, how did police get this all wrong?
Palmetto's police chief told us that detectives only had two things to go on: an uncooperative victim and this very grainy black and white surveillance video. Detectives thought this was Kevin Gray. He spent 10 days in jail for a case that stems from an incident in January. Palmetto police went to a Walmart after shoppers called 911 to report a man hitting a woman. That man hightailed it out of the store and hit an officer when they tried to arrest him. Now, fast forward to September 14th, while riding to Atlanta, police pulled over Gray and his brother. Tipped County deputies say there's a warrant out for Gray's arrest and cuff him. Once authorities took Gray to Florida, he was able to get his hands on a better surveillance photo.
On the picture, like, I knew it wasn't me, and I was like, it's not me. And then, like, all the police there, they were looking. It was like, you're right, it's not you. So me and my brother, we were on the way to vacation in Georgia for the weekend for our birthday. And then we got pulled over for a traffic stop for speeding. He gave my brother the ticket, and then he also asked me for my ID to run my name or whatever. And then he came back to the car, and then he told me that I had a warrant from out of Texas and Florida. And then the Texas one came back, and he said that wasn't me, it was a Corey Gray. But the Kevin Gray had stuck, and that was from Manatee County. And he was like, do you know where Manatee County is? And I was like, yeah, that's where I live. And then he said, the warrant is for battery on a Leo. And I was like, that can't be. Like, can you check it again? And then he said, no, it's you because I verified it. It's your picture. And I told him, like, it's the Florida license. Like, all of it is, like, it's in the system. So, of course, it's going to show my picture. I thought they were going to fingerprint me for, like, they could send it to Florida just for, like, they could verify it. But they didn't. So I sat in jail from that Friday to that Monday. Just to see the judge in Georgia. And then when I got to court that day, they made me sign an expedite paper for Florida to come and get me. And then he told me that it could take a week. And then I was just like begging him. I was like, I take care of my daughter by myself. She lives with me. I provide everything for her by myself. And then so he was like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I could do. And then when I saw the pictures, I was like, this is not me. Like, you can clearly see that it wasn't me, but it still was black and white. But me knowing me, I can see, like, that's not me. And then so he was like, wait a minute, let me look. And he looked, and then he started calling other police over there. And he was like, you're right, it's not you.
Now, for the 2020 census, the U.S. Census Bureau is changing how it will ask black people to designate their race. The checkbox for black or African American will now have a new space for people to write in their non-Hispanic origins. African American, Jamaican, and Nigerian are listed as examples of origins. Now, this is going to be interesting to see, because how many people are just going to put, I got Indian in my family in the box? Or how many will simply put Wilt Chamberlain? Or Thomas Jefferson? I want to see the final results. But will people be comfortable giving more personal information about their heritage to the government? This country's current climate is not the most welcoming to immigrants, and some people may want to continue laying low. DACA showed that our government can and will use what it knows against you. And based on the president's comments about Africa earlier this year, we also know those countries' immigrants aren't viewed fondly. Now, these things foster distrust from immigrant communities, whether they're U.S. citizens or otherwise. But my initial reaction to hearing this story was actually one of discomfort because I don't know the answer. It's difficult, if not impossible, for many American-born black people to answer that question. I've been party to a number of heritage conversations, while everyone is all too happy not to bring me in and acknowledge the 400-year-old elephant. So honestly, I'm not quite sure if asking this question is progress or insensitivity. I do think shining a light on how slavery broke up families and erased the history of huge generations is necessary. Hopefully it'll inspire more people to research their families' backgrounds and learn more about themselves.
Until you guys start bringing this issue up. Because a large group of people that look like me, clubs, spend money, and live in this community. But you guys can
Don't tell us it's nothing of substance because the monkey's all riled
up.
Let's all film them, guys.
You know where the monkey is? You know where the monkey is?
Don't do that. Don't worry about it.
No, talk to them when intelligent. A monkey is a killer. This is a monkey. This man is a monkey. That's my people. Don't make fun of white people. Yeah, white people. I'm gonna get you later. Go ahead, get you. Come on, there. I ain't touching you. I can fight you with my brain. I can fight you with my brain and my words. But you guys are predators. And you guys are killing people. Like you doing all the meth and the crap. I don't do meth. I'm fucking women all the time and you're stranding them in fucking nowhere with nowhere to go on fucking welfare. You fucking idiot. You know fucking nothing. I've been around homeless people for fucking months. You're all fucking losers. You're all fucking losers. I've been servicing homeless people. You don't use your resources. You do fucking nothing. You don't teach yourself anything. You do fucking nothing. You're on the street, so you don't teach yourself nothing, all right? Just because a white man is homeless, you're better than a black homeless man? You're better than a black homeless man? No, you're sleeping on the curb tonight because you're worthless and you're not trying to learn anything.
Jesus. Who the fuck is that?
Now, if I was acting like that,
he was sitting in the front row the whole time.
Totally different.
I assume that you were fine with Travis Scott performing there at the Super Bowl.
You know, I think there's too much extremism going on, man. No NFL owner has shot a black man. The NFL actually produces more black millionaires each year than any other corporation in the world. I'm not here saying that the NFL does all great things. They're a business. But what I will say is that black folks have to come together. Instead of us sitting here bashing Travis Scott, let's encourage this man. Let's encourage him to go into the community. I just got back from Haiti, man. It's going to be really hard for me to sit on national TV and sit here and complain about how black people are treated in America when people all over the world, we are in the greatest nation in the world for African Americans. We have opportunities. Yes, we have issues that we need to continue to. How is that debatable? We have opportunities. This is America. How is that debatable? You need to travel more then. Yeah, I think they do have a lot. We have a lot of issues, and I think that we are doing a lot to work towards them. The National Football League and its players
does nothing towards that.
Yeah. Listen, I'm all for Colin Kaepernick protesting. 100% all for Colin Kaepernick protesting.
Interestingly, Mr. Brewer has said this several times on this program. Even months ago when we were on together, he said this consistently, that the NFL should be lauded by black Americans because they've made more millionaires than anywhere else in the country for black people. That's wrong.
A good thing.
He said that they should be. He also has said that the NFL should be lauded because they're giving money to social justice groups, but that's not really expunging or making any different from the. I'm sure you're going to let me finish too. But that's not really changing exactly what we're sitting here and asking for and fighting for. There are black athletes, not only in the NFL, but across sport, that are asking just for very simple things, not only to be respected, not only for equality, but specifically for police brutality to be very much shifted in the way that it never has in the history of America.
And so if we can't just get behind that, what does that have to do with black owners? What does that have to do with NFL owners?
NFL owners are an entire white group. An entire white group that does not care.
What is that? Have they shot any black men? Are they shooting black men in the streets?
Jack, are there any black NFL owners?
No, there's not. That's unfortunate.
It's not unfortunate.
Because the teams are established. That is very unfortunate.
That's
unfortunate, but there will be. There will be.
Let me move on really quickly.
Ray Lewis is on his way. He's close.
All right, because we also at the Super Bowl 2 weeks from today, we've learned that Gladys Knight will be performing there, and she issued a statement saying that she supports, in essence, what she understands what Mr. Kaepernick is protesting. The two things, and they are police violence and injustice, but it's unfortunate that our national anthem has been dragged into this debate. Now, Gladys Knight, of course, she is from Atlanta. The Super Bowl is in Atlanta. She used to march with Justice Jackson Jr. She was part of the civil rights movement. Many of folks said she lived through the colored and whites era.
So how is the NFL racist when 80% of the NFL players are black, first off? Second off, Gladys Knight and her voice should be the symbol of America. We want her as black people. Why would we not want her singing the national anthem? We want to represent our country having beautiful black people.
Books on your bookshelf, and you can figure it out yourself.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I have two master's degrees to go along with it, and I stay in the community.
You might need one more.
I'll be in Africa next week. Come join me.
Bless.
Come join me and see the real black struggle.
You gonna flew me out? Listen, pay for the ticket. I'll be right there.
Come on. All right. Why you need me to fly you out? You got your own resources. This is America.
Right here.
This is America.
All right, fellas.
We don't talk to individual officers. That can't help us. We talk to the people who are in charge of the system, and the NFL is that. They have a responsibility. It is not okay for you to carve out when you want to stand with us. You want to ignore our issues and our communities, but you want to show up for our black beauty and our black strength. You want to make billions of dollars on our backs and not stand up for our children. You can't be so concerned with touchdowns that you are not focused on the school to prison pipeline. You cannot stand up and say that you want our players to show up and be concerned with scores and whether or not teams win, and not be present when black bodies are being shot down on the streets of this country all over the place.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RP to the brother Deandre Ballard, to the brother Jimmie Atchison. We have to start taking control of our own destiny. We can't look for anybody else to solve our problems. America understands the power that we have. They always did. That's why we've always been enemy number one. We are the only ones that don't know the kind of power that we have. And America went out of the way to make sure that happened. But our ancestors already left us the blueprint. We just have to learn how to protect it. We have to educate ourselves and then educate our children. And then put them in position to empower themselves. Our ancestors have gotten us a long way, but it's up to us to keep going. And if we don't do what we got to do, 100 years from now, we'll be in the same situation. So, as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.